So without further ado, I want to introduce the speakers that we have here today. So Dr. Vasilios Samaras. Hi. Vasilios is Senior Lecturer and Programme Director of our MSc Engineering, Leadership and Management. Ian Hobson is Senior Lecturer and a former Manufacturing Director at Tata Steel. And Sam is a graduate of our MSc Engineering, Leadership and Management programme. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to hand over to you, Vasilios, to introduce and present the first part of today's session. Over to you, Vasilios.
Can you see my screen well?
You need a share first. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Good afternoon from myself. I'm Vasilios, and along with my colleague Ian, we've put a few slides for the program with the MSc in Engineering and Leadership Management. We're also quite happy to have with us one of our former students, so he can share his experience from attending the course last year. So I've put quite a few slides, and then we'll allow plenty of time to have questions and answers at the end of the session. One of the questions that I always ask our students is, what does it take to become an engineer, and what is different really to any other profession? And if we see really this, definitely the situation 10 years ago, an engineering graduate was dealing quite a lot with technical stuff, especially in the graduate level of his careers. And as he was progressing, he was involved mainly with other aspects like project management, business development. Nowadays, really, this has been changed completely. This is a situation you can see in this graph. Nowadays, a graduate engineer not only deals with technical stuff, also expect to work quite a lot with project management, business development. So things have changed. And another thing we ask, and a question that we ask to all the students is, what skill and characteristics do you think a potential employer will want from you? Especially since all of you have completed your bachelor at the moment and you're thinking to continue further with your postgraduate studies. This is really some of the 10 top skills for 2020. And if you've seen this of them, quite a lot have critical thinking, project management, emotional intelligence, the cognitive flexibility, how we're able to switch between different concepts, think about two concepts simultaneously. And one of the things that we always say to the students is to think how many of these skills they have really in the degree in order to come in the graduate market. And this is really where the engineering leadership management MSc comes to bridge the gap really between industry and academia. And most of the academics that involve in this scheme, they have quite a lot of experience in the industry. So this course has as an underlay the engineering, but it runs within cooperation with the School of Management. And also the main point is to develop really the individuals. We involve the students in unique activities, organizational change activities, and Ian will speak shortly a bit more about this. So this is that makes this quite a unique type of course, because it's not only the technical stuff, it involves quite a lot in the personal development of the students. This is very briefly how the modules of the course, and one of the unique things as well about the course, this course runs in what we call short fat intensive delivery, so every module runs for 2 weeks. So there is quite high interaction with the module coordinators between the students themselves in the group, and except really the module which I have highlighted with red, which is a strategy module, which runs from the beginning of the academic year until the end, and eventually leads to the dissertation. All the other modules is run within 2 weeks. I'd like to pay special emphasis in this module for the strategy, because this involves real life challenges with projects like Tata Steel. So This module is the spine really of the program, and all the other modules fit around it. So I'd like to pass to my colleague Ian, who will speak a bit more about these specific modules and the real life challenges and projects that it involves.
Okay, thanks, Vasilios. I can, if I could just wind back in time a little for when this program was actually formally designed, and the question I asked myself, why did we develop this particular program? And the answer lies in the slide that Vasilios showed earlier, which showed the requirements of leaders in organizations these days. The list includes lots of emotional intelligence type activities and very little tactical type, practical type, typical business type skills. So these days, leaders in organizations, the qualifier is having the skills to do the job, the transactional stuff. But what differentiates people in our view is those that can apply the softer skills and have the emotional intelligence to actually deliver effectively their work. And when we then looked at activities around the university and the engineering school, the engineering school is very good at delivering, first degrees, etc., maths, physics, all the sciences. But as a customer of those graduates, when I was working in Tata, what I found was that they were very slow to get up to speed. They didn't hit the ground running. They didn't satisfy their own aspirations, which frustrated them. And they took a lot of mentoring to understand how organizations work and how to be effective in the teams that they joined as employees. So we started looking then at the courses that they'd been on. We noticed things were missing. And what was missing was the list of top 20 elements required by businesses in this day and age. So it's the softer skills. So we designed the program around around theory, but also a high degree of practice. So the reason Tata Steel is up on this slide is because what we actually do is we design projects in partnership with industry. In this case, it's Tata, it could be other organizations, where we ask them, where we can help them develop their own strategy when it comes to people and organizations. So we have real life projects which the students actually work on, design and deliver, present that back to the board and the receiving plant, and that they normally become embedded in their systems. And it's been so successful for both the university and Tata. This is the 4th year we've run it. Clearly it's not the same project, but it's a continuum, so we can actually see how the students' influence and impact has changed the organization. And I'm pretty sure that Sam will come on to this a little later. So that's how the course was designed. So if I can just go on to the next slide, Vasilios. So clearly, because those skills are quite personal, we're sort of born with them. People say you don't make leaders, they're born. I'm not sure that's strictly the case. They are all born, but I think we can influence them as well. Because it's quite a small group, we have the bandwidth to be able to, yes, deliver the theoretical stuff, as I call it, but also tailor the personal stuff to the individual. So while we're talking about emotional intelligence and all those skills around the individual, not everybody needs the same level of interaction as everybody else. It's a personal thing. So because we're a small group and we've got dedicated resource around the lecturers, we can actually almost personally develop the individual in those areas that they see as their learning opportunities. And I think if you speak to people that have been through the program, after 12 months have been with us and looking at where they started, yes, they get an MSc in the main, but as individuals have grown in confidence, or their communication skills have improved, or whatever it is they want to work on, they are the same people with very different skills and much more marketable in terms of the job market. So there's quite a lot of personal design into this program, and we make sure we meet those objectives. It's not easy. It means stepping out of your comfort zone sometimes and moving into spaces that you feel uncomfortable in, but that's what learning's about sometimes. So you'll develop as an individual on this program, and hopefully you'll meet the challenges that future employment will demand. And you won't become one of those people sat in the corner that doesn't quite move at the pace that they expected to do. So for me, if you want to hit the ground running in employment, and I call it a sort of oven-ready graduate, they are ready to go and raring to go and welcomed by organisations, then this is the course for you. And I think I'll just say one more thing before I hand over back to the panel. And this has surprised me because I worked in this plant, so I was part of the problem, clearly. I'm learning a lot as we go along. But as we put the students in front of the board and of directors in this plant, and as the board see these people deliver their work and the quality and the quantity with which they deliver there, I think every year, without exception, at least 1 or 2 people from a very small cohort, and it's been between 8 and 20 over the years, at least 1 or 2 people have been recruited at that point by the organisation. So they're extremely impressed with what they see, the sort of finished article, as it were. So I think I've hopefully explained what this programme's about, and I'll hand back to the panel now for any further comments or questions.
Okay, at this point, I think it would be good to bring Sam in. So thanks for joining, Sam. I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit about when you were on the programme, when you graduated, and what it is that you're doing now initially?
Yeah. So yeah, I think Ian hit all the right spots there based on the course, and for me, it was the perfect answer. From a mechanical engineering background, I was just coming towards the end of my bachelor's and on track to do the master's in mechanical engineering, but coming to the point where you kind of felt like I wanted to add a different sort of string to the bow from an engineering perspective still, and not wanting to say build on the modules that I was doing in the bachelor's and doing that at level 4, and would have rather diversified, and finding this course was the perfect answer for that, by exposing just completely different job opportunities and development that you don't really think are possible or aren't really laid out for you on a engineering bachelor's. So since that, yeah, that kind of opened up well, like operations sort of aspects, management and personal development, as Ian mentioned before. So it exposes you to group work, project work that's relevant to existing companies such as Tata. And although you do that in a bachelor's, it's still, because it's contributing to real life operations, it just exposes you to that different sort of level, but especially when you've got to relay it back to the relevant board. I lost my train of thought then. But so when you're carrying out that course as well, and you're kind of seeing the difference, you kind of feel like it's preparing you for industry. But then since starting, I luckily managed to get a manufacturing grad scheme from October, so I've been working there for a few months now, and you can even, comparing it is even more clear now that how like for like it was preparing you for industry, like what it's like to work in industry. And on the engineering leadership course, it's much more, it feels like you're already kind of working on a job when you're learning, you're kind of learning with some of, like, developing your technical engineering, say, background, but applying them to applying engineering solutions to like production improvements, and just highlighting, say, some skills as well, like Ian said, with the soft skills. You might not even think they're massively relevant when you've just got exams to do, say, like theory exams to do for your engineering bachelor's. But then they really are, and it really opens up, just makes you value probably some other skills that you might not have thought would be relevant to a role. And just throughout the year, it just really helps you channel where you think you're going to go. And definitely by those 12 months, I had a much clearer picture of what I wanted to do with my engineering background. Not that I wanted to completely move off engineering, but it was like just a different path within the engineering industry. And yeah, I'm currently in production rather than engineering, but so it's kind of still looking for rooms of improvement from a production perspective, but that involves a lot of people engagement, learning how different teams tick throughout the organization, but then also bringing in that engineering background with some solutions for where the issues might lie and that sort of thing. And yeah, I'm really happy there, and very glad that this master's kind of presented those opportunities for me, because I don't think the mechanical engineering masters would have just built on those specialist skills even more. So it depends what you want to get out of. If you already know that you want to be like very much more technical, then yeah, you might think that a heavily engineering based masters is right for you. But in terms of personal development and industry preparation, definitely it was great.
To touch on that preparation, Sam, what sort of specific exposure to industry did you have as part of your program? Who did you work closely with? What was your project focused on?
Yeah, so it's focused on occupational health at Tata, and you get split into two groups, both to kind of focus on external and internal factors for basically this new career ladder proposal that Tata was thinking of implementing, and wanting to find out if it was on the right track, if it was the right thing to do, and if it was, what was the best way to go about it. So it was a bit investigative to begin with, from an internal and external perspective. External, like what do other companies do, what works in that way, and just finding general trends with that. So that was great exposure to what's going on, like in the world in that field. And then the internal, you find out what the employees at Tata think about it, if they're aware of it, if they would be happy for it to be implemented, and exploring all of those different avenues. So the fact that it's current and you're getting involved with all of that information has just made that that was the sort of preparation. But then the fact that you're kind of working together as a team, gathering all this information and then trying to provide solutions to a real life project that's going to be launching, I would say was great preparation for it. And then obviously relaying it in the board to a variety of different people, some from HR, some directors, some engineers, all who work for Tata already. It was I think that was probably the biggest exposure, I'd say, after that. And then it was a great way to network as well. And fortunately for me, it was a great way to get my foot in the door there as well.
Good. Ian, I want to bring you in. You're on that topic of exposure, and you're a good example of the type of people that we have delivering the program and delivering the modules. What types of staff and from what sort of backgrounds do we have delivering those modules?
Well, we have a core team, so we use the engineering school academics to deliver a lot of the theory. The basic things like the employment law stuff, project management, business accounting. The tools that you actually do need to operate as a senior in engineering in organisations. But then we bring subject matter experts in. So myself, I'm an engineer professionally, but lots of experience of doing things right and doing things wrong. I've learned the hard way and the easy way in some cases. And also I've got a guy working with me now called Graham Hillier, who's an ex-director of Swansea Tidal Bay Lagoon. So So the current dissertation is on Swansea Tidal Bay Lagoon, and he was ex-director of that particular venture. So he's a subject matter expert on environment and green issues, etc., etc. So where the path takes us in terms of other content depends to some extent on what the members of the program need or want. And once we establish that need, because we do have a little bit of flexibility time-wise and content-wise on the strategy element, we will bring in subject matter experts. There's all sorts of people being in. We bring HR directors in from various companies, from Tata. Last week we had an HR director in. If the group said, look, you know, we're all applying for jobs and we'd like to learn a little bit about what to expect when we, you know, apply for a job, we bring CV writing experts in. There's all sorts of a variety, but it tends to be there's a set group of people to deliver the core, and then dependent on the makeup of the cohort and what areas they wish to explore or develop in will dictate what subject matter experts we bring in to facilitate the program. And I think it's fair to say that, you know, it's never a cut and paste. It's always founded and anchored in theory, but we like to see who we're getting on the program before we tailor the program exactly in detail. So no one year is the same. And of course, this is year 4. The course is accredited now. And we change it based on what we experience ourselves and also the feedback from the students who are going through the program. So you know, it's a two-way learning progress. Yeah, we are lecturing sometimes, we're not always right, but also we learn a lot from the guys themselves, because that helps us tailor the program to the needs of the generations that are coming through. So it does change, and unfortunately this year, of course, we've had to hit the pause button somewhat because of the pandemic, but we are always looking for the next challenge for these guys. And when this program gets boring, we give up, sort of thing. We don't allow that to happen. We keep it interesting, we keep it engaging, and we keep it relevant, and we keep it current. If we can't deliver that, we bring people in who can. We're not frightened of that at all, and that's what we do.
You mentioned the P word there, the pandemic, and obviously that's going to shape industry post-COVID, and there'll be lots of changes to operations. And how do you see this program being changed by that, but also feeding into and informing that?
Well, funny enough, I don't know, was it Sam's year? It might have been Sam's year. When we talk about strategy in general, you know, we talk about weak signals in the environment. We talk about, you know, if you're an Amazon or a Marks and Spencer's or an organization working in today's environment, as a leader, what should you be looking out for? You know, what are the hurdles that this environment is going to stick in front of our organization or in front of me as an individual, for example? And people come up with all sorts of things. You know, we've had Brexit, you know, we've had the demise of the high street, we've had Amazon, and all sorts of debates. And the last slide I put up a year ago, February, a year ago, before this thing hit, was a picture of the COVID-19 vaccine. And I asked the guys, I said, how do you think this is going to affect us? And you know what? I don't think anybody could have predicted what was going to happen from that. And even now, you know, when it feels like we might be coming out of it, there's different hurdles keep being put in our way. But how's it going to shape the program? Well, for me, it's another example of how organizations have to be outward looking. It's another example. And okay, it's COVID this year. I haven't got a clue what it's going to be next year. You know, I didn't think Brexit was going to happen. I didn't think Donald Trump was going to get in. You know, I didn't think we're going to have COVID. So there's some huge noise in the external environment that is, the only predictable thing about it is it's going to happen. What you don't know is what it's going to look like. So in answer to your question, what we try and instill in both our students and the organizations we work with is agility. If you're not agile these days, you're out of business. You know, this thing's got to be watched and tracked all the time. And for the university, it's the same message. They're not immune to anything in the external environment. And I think You know, we've had a dose of online learning. It's new to me. I prefer face-to-face, I have to say. But I think for the university, it's demonstrated agility, the fact we're doing this, the fact we're maintaining programs. But I also think, for me, I think the university has to embed elements of what we're talking about now into all its programs, because it's what people need these days. So I think what you will see in general programs, a content of, yeah, here's a theory, here's how to apply it, and here's what real life looks like. Because I think that's missing. And I think this pandemic has made people realize that, you know, an aerospace engineer who's going to a career in aerospace, which is great, flagship industry, all of a sudden it's gone. It's gone. You know, so how do we prepare candidates for stuff like that happening? And most of the ELM cohort this year are aerospace. So it's about outward looking, it's about look at the programs you're delivering, and it's about, are they still relevant, are they still current, and how can we adapt them mid-flow if we need to quickly. And I think for me, that's a learning point for the university, and certainly for me, you've got to be agile in this world. I don't know whether that answers your question or not.
No, there's no. The key thing is, you know, there are opportunities off the back of things like pandemic, but also any disruption. But it's also how you can mitigate against disruption and be proactive ahead of it.
Absolutely, get ahead of the curve.
Brilliant, Vasilios, and a couple of examples have been mentioned already. To what sectors and to what types of organisations do our cohort apply the theory and also the practical side to in practice as part of the program? Then you able to give us some examples?
Program, Adam, is open first of all to all engineering disciplines, and even actually we have people in the program that they are not only engineering. You know, they have a science background. Yes, it has an underlay of engineering, but it's not necessarily, you don't have to be an engineer. We give quite a lot of the cooperation with the School of Management is key as well, because we have a lot of this theory that you need in order to have a more management. But as Ian said, the key that we try to do is this agility that we try to embed. So a person, for example, that has done a mechanical engineer, then he might have opportunities to get in some positions of organizations in sort of engineering management positions, but at the same time he can still have these technical positions. So it's open a bit the horizons. And I think still there is this, and I think some highlighted as well, there is this gap between a lot of times academia and industry. And a lot of people, they have the technical ability, but when you go as a graduate, the technical ability is only a part. So we try to equip the students with more soft skills, more diversity, so then they can be open to a lot of opportunities in engineering, but not only purely engineering. And that's the message really we try to bring out.
I think one question we always ask on day one, or maybe day two, to all the cohort is, you know, do any of you know what you want to do when you leave this program? And they all have a stab at it, and the most popular answer is, I want to be a project engineer. And then we say, how many of you want to be leaders? And all the hands go up, all of them. You know, so you've got a cohort there of this year 27 people, all want to be leaders. A couple want to be project managers, but the rest of them haven't got a clue what they want to do. So what we try and do is open their eyes beyond being a project manager, because very few of them end up being project managers for some reason, but open their eyes to the opportunity of engineering. It isn't just about the nuts and bolts of engineering, into leadership, you know, and management and production engineering and chemical engineering and everything else that goes with it, and also open their eyes to what actually organizations are looking for. And people are often surprised that somewhere like Tata, for example, employs every kind of engineer you can think of. They just don't know that. So we actually open their eyes to what organizations actually need, as well as just follow their own thought pattern of what they want to do, because very few of them actually know. With 12 months to go, 3 months to when they're applying, they don't know what they want to do. So we try and we try and solidify their thoughts before this time of year, before February, if we possibly can, as to a general direction, and get them to create a personal strategy of, where I see myself in 3 or 4 years, but also a bit of a plan of how they might want to get there. Well, it's more of a journey than a destination, but just ticking off some of the opportunities they have in their own makeup, which will help them achieve their objective. At the end of the program, they they've got a few applications and most of them are successful. Quite a few, of course, are international and work in their home countries, and quite a few are UK. But most people over the 4 years end up placed somewhere in a region where they want to be placed, which is pretty good for us.
I want to interject at this point with a question from the audience. So Mr. Farladon is the principal of Westerfield College in Lagos, and he's asking, is the course more or less like an MBA with a focus on engineering? So Ian or Vasilios, if either of you wants to pick that up. With you first, Ian.
Well, I did an MBA. It wasn't like this. I think it has a sprinkling of MBA over it. But it's an MBA with practicalities. So whilst the MBA is anchored in theory, when I did my MBA, this uses the theory, but half of it is anchored in practicality as well. So it's almost like an MBA with an apprenticeship thrown in as well. It's a blend. It's not just an academic MBA, because these are engineers, bear in mind, we're dealing with as well. So it's sort of MBA, but with more of a practical approach to it, I would say. Does that make sense, Vasilios? That's why.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree. I wouldn't agree more. Really, it's exactly as you said at the end, because I also did an MBA a few years ago, and it's much more in theory. Here, you have this underlay of some lessons of the School of Management, but it's more tailor-made for engineers. And it's important to mention that there is not a lot of similar degrees. That's why we put this slide as well. That is a unique type of course, and because it's more tailor-made as well to the individual people. Yes, because you have the cooperation with the School of Management, it has some elements of theory from MBA. I would say probably not so deep in the theory like an MBA, because as Ian said, most of the people have the engineering background. But really, to put it in simple terms, we try to make engineers think a bit more wide, because sometimes perhaps engineer could be more focused just in engineering. So we try to open a bit the horizon. So yes, it's not an MBA, but it has elements of this.
It's worth mentioning as well, Vasilios, that this program is supported by what we call an industry board. So there are probably half a dozen industries represented on the board that support this program. And what they do is they look at our offering in terms of the content, the syllabus, how we deliver what we deliver. And they look at their operations, and if they see something of a gap, saying, look, we need more of the graduates aware of, I don't know, finance, wherever it happens to be, then they will feed back into the program and say, look, the graduates you're delivering is fine, except there's 1 or 2 skill areas missing. So they have an input into the syllabus to make sure that what we're delivering is aligned to industry or employer, it's not just industry, expectations. And we meet a couple of times a year and we just tick off that, yeah, you're doing the right stuff, industry 4, whatever it happens to be. That's what they need, and that's what we build into the program. So there's the students' input, there's our own input, and there's also the customers, as I call it, input in terms of where these students will probably end up working, or representative areas of that particular employing opportunity.
Good. In terms of the structure and the format of the program, and you've each mentioned that it is unique, and I think at this point explain that we got a fairly international audience. So the MSc is 12 months duration, so it's 1 year long, and that differs to master's programs in other countries. And Vasilios, you explained how nearly all of the modules are done over 2 weeks in intensive short modules. How does that impact on how they're delivered? And Sam, you can jump in. Are those modules intense in terms of you're focusing on certain thematic stuff in bite-sized chunks like that as well. So I'll start with you first, Vasilios, to explain that 2-week module, and then Sam, your experiences on it.
Yes, thanks, Adam. Definitely it's an intense, but except really the strategy module, which, as we said with Ian, is the spine of the program and goes throughout the whole year. And this involves quite a lot of one-to-one with students, other things, and eventually lead to the dissertation. Most of the modules involved in what short intensive delivery, which is 2 weeks. And it is intense, and I'm sure Sam will say there is a lot of hours of delivery, a lot of interaction with the students, a lot of work to do, assignments, even exams, but this happened in the 2 weeks period. And what it helps really, especially for some modules, they build this rapport with the module coordinator, and they build this dynamic. So yes, it's intensive, the delivery, but also has a different speed, the program. So it helps this for the students to focus entirely for 2 weeks in a specific subject, working projects. But yes, go back to, it's definitely intense really. It's not, we don't say it's an easy program, because this delivery of the 2 weeks is definitely sometimes tiring, and straight away they start another module. And I don't know if you want to say anything else for this. You were exposed to this quite recently.
It's definitely a challenge of your time management, I think, in a different way to most other courses. You'll have, like, say, the spine of the course as the strategy module that's ongoing, but then all of the others are, say, you'll have lectures maybe Monday to Wednesday, something like that, and then a few more Thursday to Friday. But then, say, by that Wednesday, you'll have to be working on, say, a project around the material that you've learned, prepare a presentation to show your understanding, and then sometimes an exam maybe at the end of the following week. So even though it's quite intense, it is kind of all focused on, like, the current stuff that you're doing in that week, which basically it's like doing a crash course project, rather than, say, a lot of projects that you'd have like going on, you'd have them ticking over maybe alongside each other. This is like, it gives you real opportunities just to focus on one area, and it really helps you solidify that understanding of one area. Like, to me, it really suited my way of working from a studying perspective, because you've got like an ongoing module, but then you've also got the other stuff that you can just work through that throughout the week, and then kind of juggling your time a bit to make sure you've got an assignment in maybe for like midweek one, and then making sure that you say your presentation or exams up to scratch for the end of that week. But then, because you're all kind of doing them together, each assignment, so whether it be a presentation, exam, or an essay, or like project delivery, helps solidify your understanding for each of the other ones that you're going to do. So say you might have done a presentation on the Wednesday, and then when it comes to you doing the exam on the Friday, you going through that presentation, working on your presentation skills, also helps solidify all of the knowledge that you might need for the exam as well. And I think one nice thing I found from it as well was sometimes the way it is short fat, you actually sometimes get a weekend, because then you might have a Friday, but then you're starting the next one on the Monday. So if you've got everything out the way by the end of the week, you can actually get some form of structure going there as well. Whereas, like, if you're juggling all sorts of modules, say, in different courses, your weekends and your free time kind of merges into whenever you get a chance to work on it, really. So yeah, I thought it was worked well for me. I
guess that focused, concentrated sort of format.
Yeah,
there's no noise of other modules, and you can dedicate yourself wholly to what you've got in hand.
Yeah, and you've got one that's ticking over, and like I say, it is intense because might have a lot to do in a short space of time. But then that is preparation for industry as well. Like, you are tied to deadlines like that sometimes, and you may have to crack on a bit more than usual in that respect too. So yeah, it's all good learning, I think.
You've picked out some examples. Like, there's a range of assessment methods as well, I guess. And you mentioned as well, Ian, the cohort size and the group work that's around there. So how important is that collaboration, working with others, and in what ways is it applied within the program modules?
Well, one of the common problems we have, well, I think it's a problem, is communication. I mean, particularly now with, with this distance learning, myself and Graham, who kicked the program off, one thing that we absolutely need is participation and feedback. And sometimes that's hard to get. And I think, having been in this 4 years now, some students are pretty noisy, others are very quiet. Some people are totally quiet for all sorts of reasons. And I think the fact that the cohort is a manageable size means that we can identify whether that's a problem or it isn't. Because if you move into your role in the big wide world with that inability, shall we say, or intention not to communicate, and what I mean by that is, feeding back and how's things going and let us know, then you're going to have a problem. So what we do, we split the cohort in two, if there's two of us, and we have 7 or 8 or whatever the number is, students, as we describe them, as our personal students. So we are their personal mentor and they are mentees. We hold their hands for the first 2 weeks. And what I mean by that is we have a one-to-one with them, we arrange it, and we say, look, tell us a bit about yourself. You don't have to do it in a big class, and start talking. Tell us what you want about this program. So that's almost day 1, day 2. So it gives us time to tailor things. But from that first one-to-one, and it is a formal one, so we do take some notes. We then sort of let go of the hands a little bit and say, right, it's up to you now, because in the big wide world, no one's going to chase you around. They might for the first few weeks. You need to come back to me and tell me how you're getting on and what else you need. And some people do, some people don't. So we have to pick people up. So it enables us to build those relationships leading up to the dissertation. When we get to dissertation, we personally mentor a dissertation. So we'll mentor half each. So we've got the relationships, we understand the people, but it also enables us to work on the personal development opportunities beyond the content that's delivered with that individual. So because it's work like that, any issues that the students get, whether personal issues or whether academic issues or whether they just want to talk about something, the mechanism is there. But more importantly, they recognize that the onus is actually on them to make that call. And what we find is the people that make the call and ask the question, I know it's like stating the obvious, are the ones that actually deliver the best results. It's an obvious statement. And when people see that happening in the bigger group, it encourages them to do the same sort of thing. So we end up with lots of people making lots of noise, good noise, and communicating very, very well by the end of the program. So the course enables us to see what needs doing, but also the course members, it gets them to see that, yeah, this does make a difference, and it's just self-fulfilling. It just works, because life's a bit like that. So that's where I think the group size and the way it's structured helps, because we build in time for that activity. You won't see it on the syllabus, but that can happen at 7 at night, 8 at night, weekends, Mondays, Tuesdays. So it is a 20, because we've got people all over the world, different time zones. Really, we're working, I'm not saying we're working every hour of every day, but it's all sorts of strange times, and that's what we provide. And that makes it a little unique as well. They don't have to wait till Monday morning, 9 o'clock, before they ask their question. Yeah, so that helps.
Good. I'm conscious of time, so I want to leave it to final comments. So if I start with you then, Sam, in terms of where you are now, and obviously you're practicing in industry, and you touched on it at the start. What is the thing and the specific, whether it's professional or personal, that you've taken from the MSc Engineering Leadership and Management program that has served you best where you are now?
Definitely focusing on, say, softer skills, the engagement with Ian, Graham, and the relevant mentors on the course. Just really helps you maybe build a confidence that you might not even think you need to go into a job. If you think you're learning all of the, you've got all the theory under your belt, you might think that you're ready and raring. But once you're exposed to this sort of level of engagement, with like project, like group work, and applying them to industry, I think you just feel more like when you're stepping through the door for the job for the first time, like I did, you feel much more prepared, and almost, I mean, you don't really ever know what to expect, but I think you've got a bit more expectations of what it's going to be like, what you want to get out of it, yeah, and where you want your career to go.
Brilliant. And then, as program director, Vasilios, any final comments from yourself?
No, Adam, as I said before, and because myself, I joined Swansea University 2 years ago. Although I studied in Swansea, I was in the industry for nearly 15 years. And one word that I would use for this program is opportunity. And I think it gives great amount of opportunities to engineers, all to other science, technical people in the multidisciplinary workplace to find new opportunities and new challenges, and gives you all of these guides in order to be able to take on these challenges.
Well, in terms of next steps, if anybody would like to find out more, if you're interested in finding out more about the program itself or about application and admissions, my contact details are on screen there. This is a direct line through to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have, and also hook you up with the likes of Vasilios and Ian there as well, if you'd like to discuss anything that we've explored in today's session any further. So take a note of those contact details there. And the final thing to do is to thank you guys for joining us today. So everyone who tuned in live, everyone who's asked questions, but in particular, Ian, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Sam, you did a night shift last night, so I just want to thank you for your input there and for joining us.
I hope that didn't rub off too much.
And Vasilios, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adam. Pleasure.
Okay.